What did God promise Phinehas in Numbers 25? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Numbers on Walking Through the Bible. If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Numbers chapter 25. We're going to be reading from verses 10 to 18. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Numbers 25, beginning at verse 10. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, has turned back my wrath from the children of Israel, because he was zealous with my zeal among them, so that I did not consume the children of Israel in my zeal. Therefore say, Behold, I give to him my covenant of peace, and it shall be to him and his descendants after him a covenant of an everlasting priesthood, because he was zealous for his God, and made atonement for the children of Israel. Now the name of the Israelite who was killed with the Midianite woman, was Zimri, the son of Salu, a leader of a father's house among the Simeonites. And the name of the Midianite woman who was killed was Cosbi, the daughter of Zur. He was the head of the people of the father's house in Midian. Then the Lord spake to Moses, saying, Harass the Midianites and attack them, for they harassed you with their schemes, by which they seduced you in the matter of Peor, and in the matter of Cosbi, the daughter of the leader of Midian, their sister, who was killed in the day of the plague because of Peor. In this chapter, we have seen Israel commit physical and spiritual harlotry with the women of Moab by not only having sex with them, but going after their gods. From other passages in Scripture, including later on in Numbers, we find that Balaam had put this idea in the head of Balak, king of Moab, as a means for having God become angry with Israel. And indeed, God was angry, so much so that he sent a plague among them that killed 24,000 by the time it was done. To make matters worse, one of the men of Israel paraded around one of the harlots of the Midianites in the sight of Moses and the people who were gathered together to sorrow at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. For this offense, Phinehas, who would have been a priest, because he was of the son of Eleazar the high priest, chased after these two with a javelin, and when he caught up with them, thrust them through with the javelin, so that they died. We didn't mention this in the last lesson, but we do have to note that we would normally look at this act as an act of vengeance and murder, and thus sinful. Why? Because we don't read of a direct command by God for Phinehas to do this. And yet, here in verse 10, God approved of what Phinehas did, so much so that he attributed Phinehas' actions as the reason why his wrath was turned away from Israel. Was God condoning vengeance and murder here? No, I don't believe he was. First of all, let's remember this man was presenting this Midianite woman before Moses and the people of the tabernacle. His sin was not a secret. It was open for all to see, and thus he was guilty. Second, this man was approaching the tabernacle of meeting, and anyone approaching the tabernacle of meeting needed to be clean. From Leviticus 15:16, having sexual intercourse with a woman rendered someone unclean until evening. And yet here this man was, parading around with a harlot, presumably unclean, and approaching the tabernacle. Listen to what Leviticus 15 verse 31 says. Thus you shall separate the children of Israel from their uncleanness, lest they die in their uncleanness when they defile my tabernacle that is among them. This man deserved to die, and as the priest of the tabernacle, Phinehas would have been responsible that nothing unclean approached and defiled the tabernacle, as we studied in Numbers 18. Verse 1. So in this case, and seeing as how God wanted all the offenders in this case to be killed, Phinehas was justified in his actions. And at any rate, God said that he approved of Phinehas' actions, so while this doesn't give authority to everybody in Israel to go out and kill, it does settle the matter in the case of Phinehas. What did God promise Phinehas because of his actions? That it would be his household where the priesthood, presumably the high priest, would come from. Now that might have been assumed by us, since Phinehas was the son of Eleazar, the current high priest, and from what we can tell from Exodus 6:25, the only son of Eleazar. But with God, whether it was kings or priests, bloodline was not the determiner. Other things might come into play. However, because of Phinehas' faith, this was God's promise, which would come to pass with a short exception in the days of Samuel and Saul for reasons that were not told in Scripture. In verse 14, we find out the identities of the two people who were killed by the hand of Phinehas. The man was Zimri, the son of Salu, a leader of the father's house among the tribe of Simeon. And the name of the Midianite woman was Cosbi, the daughter of Zur, a man who was head of the people of a father's house in Midian. As we can see then, just like the Midianites were in league with the Moabites in summoning Balaam to curse Israel, they were also in league with Moab here. And for this reason, God gave permission for Israel to harass the Midianites and attack them throughout their generations, for they had harassed Israel here and caused them to sin. So as we've noted in other passages, sometimes the consequences for people's sins are passed down to their children, something we need to consider as we try to live lives that are holy to God. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Numbers chapter 26, verses 1 to 4, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.